Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Chris Hurn, CEO, co-founder, Fountainhead Capital. Chris, welcome. And
That's
Delaney
right.
Sexton is in. She's going to talk to us about what's in Washington. John is working and Lance is on vacation. And so it's Chris, thank you for joining us and provide your insights. Delaney, what's going on? And Joseph, please, next time, put these all on a separate page. We have a lot of old people, including me, who can't read this stuff.
Well, recently the House passed 7 bills. They have all gone to the Senate now, and they're being referred to the Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship. The first 2 are ones we've already talked about before, the PPP Bank Fraud Enforcement Harmonization Act of 2022 and the COVID-19 Idle Fraud Statute of Limitations Act of 2022. Both of these would extend all forms of PPP and idle fraud statute of limitations for 10 years, meaning into 2031 and 2032.
Jeez.
There's also the Small Business Workforce. Yeah, we'll be looking at that for a while. The Small Business Workforce Pipeline Act would help aid small businesses by spreading information from the Department of Labor. There's the Supporting Small Business and Career and Technical Education Act, which would help small businesses meet their hiring needs by aiding them with meeting graduates to hire and also aiding graduates with potentially starting their own small business. The women-owned small...
I'm sorry, Delaney, when you say graduates, can you be graduates of college? What type of graduates?
So they're specifically focusing on career and technical schools.
Okay.
There's a Women-Owned Small Business Program Transparency Act, which would just improve transparency, accountability, and ensure that Congress receives all the necessary data to evaluate these programs. There's a Hub Zone Price Evaluation Preference Clarification Act, which would clarify the price evaluation preferences and allow small businesses to compete on a level playing field. And finally, the last one is the Strengthening Subcontracting for Small Business Act, which encourages compliance of subcontracting plans, and it requires the agency to consider prior compliance with these plans. And that's it.
Very good. Very nice recap. Delaney, are these bipartisan in nature? How was the vote, and what's it look like going into the Senate?
I believe they're bipartisan. I didn't see any issues with the vote, and I have a good feeling that these should pass through the Senate.
Okay.
Some of these are relatively new and have already been on a pretty quick path. So,
Chris, what I find amazing is with all the fireworks in Washington, and Washington has always had fireworks and controversy and whatever. Every now and then you see these under the radar things that the Congress gets together and says, yeah, we want to do these type of things. What's your overall impression? Positive, negative?
I think this is positive. I don't think there's anything really controversial here. You know, it's pretty basic stuff. I mean, but yeah, I just don't see anything controversial here. I'm not sure what the budget impact is going to be on these things, but you know, in the grand scheme of things, it'll be fairly minor, I suspect.
Yeah, I don't know what the cost. I don't even know if they have a cost associated with these. But you're right that for what they're talking about, it seems to be minor.
Yeah.
They're what I like about this is for a budding entrepreneur, there are resources they can go that are inexpensive. Through the SBDCs and through the women's business centers, and you and I get all this spam on courses that cost thousands of dollars on how to start a business and consultants and whatever, but they can go and do this. And I like the fact that they're programs that are geared for women, geared for veterans. Obviously, rural is a huge issue, and minorities. So they're taking those buckets and they're saying, hey, and these are the success stories, which I think is the true value. And those are always nice to see and say, you can do this too, and this is what you need to do to get your act together. So,
and I like the emphasis on apprenticeships, because that's not something we've traditionally had over the last several decades in this country. It works really well in some other countries. So I think it's terrific. It's a step beyond just internships. And I've often referred to our internship program as more like an apprenticeship. So I'm glad to see this is catching on a little bit. I think it's definitely needed.
Yeah, well, good for you. Yeah, that's true. Hey, we got I got an email from someone, and they're talking about they're ramping up their SBA department, and they're talking about what should be in the SBA loan policy. I have some very specific thoughts about this, and this is probably a good timing for you to be on. But let's ask the audience first. Number one, does your institution have a separate SBA loan underwriting policy? You can expand that also to underwriting, servicing, and liquidation.
There we go.
Very good. For you and the 17% that are no, do it if you want to get involved with SBA lending.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris. I'll let you. Why is that important? I'm going to give you a hard question here. Why do we need a separate SBA loan policy?
Because SBA is going to probably ask you for it.
That's one of the first things. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so SBA wants to make sure that your institution's doing things in compliance with what they expect institutions to do when they have a portfolio of SBA loans or they're originating new SBA loans. So yeah, I think that 17% and the 7% that don't know, you probably need to get into this and make sure.
And the reason why this is important first of all, you should sit down and not in the heat of battle or heat of a transaction, decide what do we want our portfolio to look like. That's prudent management. But also, SBA gets questioned all the time, hey, why do we have this program?
Right.
Why do we need this program? Are the people who are getting the funds, are those the ones that deserve the funds?
Right.
From an oversight question, those are all legitimate questions. And SBA in turn turns to the lenders and say, okay, what are you doing? And that's why there's such an emphasis on this topic, emphasis on credit elsewhere, and that's why SBA is asking us to do these type of things is, what are you doing? The good news is you have a tremendous amount of latitude on what you can do. You just need to put it on paper. So that's why this is always is brought up. I think we have a second poll question, Joseph. Oh, yeah, we do. And if you have one for your 76%, how long is your policy? All over the board. Chris, I'll start with you. How long's yours? You're different because you're I shouldn't say strictly, but you are primarily an SBA shop, so that's a little bit different animal.
Yeah, we're an SBLC, a small business lending company. Yeah, ours is definitely over 20 pages. I'm impressed. I'm not sure how the groups that did 5 to 10 pages or less than 5 pages, I'm not sure how they did that. That's pretty impressive. Maybe they should reach out to me afterwards. But yeah, SBA generally wants very, very detailed information on this. Now, if your institution already has a conventional loan policy, things that address servicing, things that address underwriting, liquidations, etc., maybe this could be shortened. But obviously, most of the ones that I've seen over the years are much more than 20 pages long.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of shorter the better. This one that came in at 5 pages. And as you said, that can only be done if you have a general underwriting policy.
That's right.
Okay, so let me go through this. Number one, I do not have a template. I discourage templates. I discourage you going to getting someone else's. I've heard stories anecdotally where a person has left one institution, gone to another, and they simply, back in the day, they photocopied policy and didn't bother to change the name of the institution, which is huge, which means you don't care about it, you didn't put any time into it. And that's what they want. That's what they want to see. So I don't offer that. I just encourage you to sit down and do it. And the template's the SOP. And do not, I know there's people who copy and paste the SOP. Do not do that. Refer to the SOP. For example, one of the ways you can keep it down is start at the back in servicing liquidation and simply say, hey, we're going to service and liquidate these loans as we do our conventional loans, period, and follow the SOP guidelines. That's legitimate. Remember, the SBA isn't, I haven't heard SBA be critical about specific policies. They want to make sure you have it, and they want to make sure it's your original material.
Right.
That's the key. You're not going to go in there and, okay, Chris, you got a B+ on your policy. Good job. It could be a little bit better. They're not.
No.
I mean, if there's something that sticks out, they're going to say that, but they want to make sure you have the policy. And then the second follow-up is, does everyone know about it for the 6% you don't, and are we following it?
Right.
Now, this one that I got, I liked how they did these. They said it's a government guaranteed loan policy, and they have 3 programs. They talked about SBA, and they talked about the SBA 504, and they talked about USDA. Oh, and also Express, and what they want to do in this. So they define it and say, hey, we want to be involved with these. We're going to follow the regulations. And they talk about the guarantee. And then they talked about the type of businesses that they want to do, and the type of and this is what I like, which is the key, is these are the criteria that will trigger the use of a government guaranteed loan program at their institution, which is perfect.
Right.
The borrower is unable to obtain credit elsewhere. Okay, perfect. And as we said, you don't put in there that these loans are being repaid by the guarantee. No, the loans are being repaid by cash flow, not by the guarantee. And you can, and I think for that non-obtained credit elsewhere, that's fine. If you want to expand upon it, you can. But this institution has already referenced that, hey, the credit elsewhere is on pages da-da-da, and we're going to follow that. But they simply
about that, Bob, is that they need to actually expand a bit on a deal-by-deal basis. They can't they just can't get credit elsewhere. Now, you need to probably say the reason we aren't doing this conventionally is because we would require, twice the equity injection or 2.5 times the equity injection, or we'd have a much shorter term or a much shorter amortization or what have you. SBA does want you to have a little more detail than just they can't get credit.
No, absolutely. I'm just talking about the policy, the individual underlying transaction. You are going to be in much more detail, absolutely, and you're going to be very specific in terms of what that is. But collateral is not sufficient to support the loan. Perfect SBA type loan.
Yep.
I like this one, real estate loan to value up to 90%. Is necessary, so we'll do 90% loan, but we want to have the guarantee. Cash flows are based on pro formas. I like that. In other words, the lender's saying, okay, we will look at projections.
Right.
We will base it, but we're not going to, and these are items we're not going to do conventionally. These are ones that we need the SBA loan.
That's right.
The debt service coverage ratio is right at the minimum of what SBA wants of 1.15 to 1. And therefore, I'm assuming the bank has its own criteria of probably closer to 1.3. Startup businesses within 2 years, so we're not going to do it unless conventionally, unless they've been in business for 2 years and they define the startup that SBA defines what a startup is. And borrower possesses management ability but may not have experience in the industry, such as a franchise. So I like those. And that's all. And you don't have to define. My opinion is, Chris, I'll let you chime in on this. My opinion is you don't have to define those. We've listed them. We've referenced everything to go into detail, reference the SOP. And then on the specific transaction, you will go into more detail on that. How do you feel about that as a strategy?
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And then you can pick and choose from some of the things that you just mentioned about that are unique aspects of the deal that you're trying to get an SBA guarantee on. Absolutely. Yeah,
but what I like about that, someone walks in and say, hey, I've been in business for a year and I want to do this, and here's my 2021 tax returns. You've been busy year, bam, we have to talk SBA. And that's legitimate. That's absolutely legitimate. I like that they put in their geography, the footprint.
Right. Very important.
Their mission is to serve underserved markets and concentrations. The bank will commit to use 50% of risk-based capital to support the government guaranteed lending program. That's pretty bold.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
But they're showing their commitment to that. And then, as I said, and then they talk about the staff. They're dedicated to support everything: underwriting, closing, servicing, liquidation. In other words, they're not putting in there that we're relying on loan service providing for these. I know, why don't you talk a little bit about there when you have your audits, how much does SBA want you to do in-house, and when are they comfortable for you to go to outside consultants for aid?
Well, I guess, again, it depends on the institution. I mean, as an SBLC, they're pretty particular that we keep these things in-house, that we manage the assets that we underwrote, that we closed, in case and that we're servicing. So they're pretty particular about that for SBLCs. They're less so for banks and credit unions. I don't think I've seen all of this, Bob. I mean, I've seen institutions outsource underwriting. I've seen institutions effectively outsource closing. To some extent, I've seen them outsource servicing and liquidations. But, any of those are sort of the four magic areas that if you want to outsource, you do need to get a lender service provider agreement in place, and you've got to send it to SBA, and SBA has to approve it so that you can actually outsource those functions.
Right. Yeah, and I think the general rule is that they don't mind you using those for one-off transactions or review now and then. That's perfectly legitimate, but they don't want you to abdicate entirely your responsibility on liquidation.
Well, you can't. Truth to be told, if you have an LSP arrangement, you as the lender of record, you're still on the hook no matter what. So you gotta tread carefully here if this is something that's part of your business plan.
I also like what they put. They put loan approval limits. So they listed all the positions and what they could approve on the gross amount of the loan. So this is short and sweet, and that's I believe that is fine. Obviously, you're going to be on specific transactions. You're going to be a little bit more in depth, but the fact that you have a separate policy is a huge step. Develop it internally. They certainly don't want to see what Chris is doing. They don't want to see that popping up verbatim as another lender, and that's why Chris don't bother writing. You can write Chris, but he's not going to send it to you.
Yeah, I mean, and I think SBA is also a lot of these things. They're looking for making sure that, as you said, Bob, make sure you have it in place, but make sure you have the right internal controls. They want to. One of the things you didn't mention was, mentioning something about third-party reports. You don't want sales or business development overseeing third-party reports, for instance. You don't want sales or business development having an authority over credit, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
There's just little nuances like that. Mostly, you probably already have it. If you're a bank or a credit union, you probably already have it with your regulators. But SBA wants to make sure you've pulled forward those best practices for
and you can go in and you can put in clawbacks. You can put, this is how we pay our business development officers. I know there's a couple of institutions that have a policy which says, hey, we don't pay commissions to our business development officers. We set their salary first of the year based on what they did, but we're not going to pay on a per loan basis. And as you said, to make sure that if that person's approving a loan, that they don't have a financial interest through a committee to do that. That's the old BLX story when they one of their managers got themselves in trouble. Anyway, so I thought that'd be fascinating. Hey, we're out of time. Hey, Chris, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. It's been a while since we've had you. We have a couple of webinars coming up. One is we're going to SBA insurance standards. We're refinancing debt seems to be a hot topic these days from the Inspector General in terms of when it has to do with a refinancing of a private debt, i.e. this is really a business acquisition loan. And finally, cleaning up your PPP portfolio, things we need to do before, September 30, 2022. This concludes today's webinar. This concludes today's Coleman Report Live. Thank you for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time. Spit that one out on you. Thanks, Chris.
Bye, everybody. Take care.